Down a darkened drive, you'll find their candlelight. From a widow's peak, you'll see it burning bright. Through the double doors into their dusty tomb, you'll feel eyes from paintings follow room to room. On the creaky stairs, you may think twice, as you tell yourself those bangs are mice. In the upstairs hall, you'll see shadows dance. There's a light from the candle, this is your only chance. You run and you cry as you curse this dark night, only to find at the end there's no candlelight. Instead, there's some headphones you put on full of fear. When suddenly it's every nightmare rolled into one that you hear. And it says, "Welcome to the Paranormal Sideshow with your host, John and Stacey Edwards of ParanormalSideshow.com. Hello and welcome to the Paranormal Sideshow. I'm your host, John Edwards, and joined as always by my lovely wife, Stacey.
Hello.
And we are in need of a vacation.
Yes, we are.
I've been thinking about this. It's like very, very important that we take a proper vacation this year. So I'm trying to figure out, do we want to go to the cabin? Not that we own a cabin somewhere.
Right,
just,
to a cabin.
To a cabin. I shouldn't say the cabin.
Right.
To their summer home in, Paris, France. To a cabin or to a beach?
I don't know. It's two very different vacations.
It is, especially down here. So in the South, we would go to a beach, like a warm, hot beach with soft sand and, hard bodies. Or we would go to a cabin in the woods and deep away from everybody and still use the fireplace because that's just fun. And, have a little time in the jacuzzi and whirlpool and
the nice quiet and cook out and I love doing that.
I do too. I think the cabin for the win.
I think so.
I really want the water though. God, I miss it. We could probably drive to a beach just for a week, like a day.
Right.
Just to say, there's the water, breathe it in, breathe it out. Let's go back.
Right.
Whole time we could listen to a book.
I mean, it depends what you're looking for, because if we do the cabin, that's a relaxing vacation. It can be relaxing at the beach, but not if you go to a beach where it's super crowded and you got to get on the boardwalk. And
and
it's
violence,
just a lot of trouble.
Violence and hoodoo. And
if we go to a resort or something where you get like a private beach, that would be okay.
But also, people have gotten so weird lately. I mean, every day you turn on and somebody's shooting up a resort or something. I'm serious. Like, I would have a lot less pain, I think, in the cabin. So,
secluded cabin where no one's around us for the win.
Yeah, yes. That's it. That's it for the win. And plus, we can still do cool stuff and, at the cabin. Like, even we could probably go do paranormal stuff around the cabin.
We could. Or
we could just look for a haunted cabin. I'm sure there's some haunted things that's...
I'm quite sure.
That's happened in them. I don't know. That's really something I've been thinking about a lot though, because we went through some family ordeals. We went through this, we went through that, went through a wiffle ball bat. We, ever since we moved down here, it's been pretty much nonstop. But it was nonstop up there before we came, and I never turn off. So with my hashtag Bruce Wayne job, I never stop.
That's true.
7 days a week. It's just nonstop. We can be in a movie theater, and I still do my closing numbers, and no matter what I'm doing. It's funny because one of my friends in the wrestling world, he just, I love him to death, right? And there's one little like clique in the wrestling world, and we all have the this Facebook Messenger group that pretty much the veterans of the group, so to speak. And we've all been friends for a long time, so we share. When you're in a wrestling locker room, it's very strange because you share things that most men in a friendship would not share.
Right.
Okay. You go through a lot of ups and downs. You trust each other to not kill one another when you're holding that person over your head. Okay. You're either going to safely put them in a position on that mat or you're going to drop them on their head and kill them.
Right.
There's just a lot of safety. There's a lot of brotherhood
That a lot of trust.
A lot of trust, a lot of brotherhood, and that goes into it. And when you do something like that, you're sort of deciding, I'm going to give up a few years of my life to do something I've always loved and to entertain people. Okay? There's a certain amount of crazy that goes into it.
Right.
So anyway, we've been friends for a long time, and it's funny because this one guy, I love him to death. He's my age, but he had no idea about everything that we do.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it's just been like one thing after another. Like he's just finding out all these little things as it goes. And he just found out about like the singing the other day and just found, he's like, you're kidding me, you know? It's just so funny. And once again, you don't think about that stuff. You just don't think about it. But we're always going. And it's one thing after another, after another, after another. I have all these projects. And it's not like I just halfway participate in one of the projects. It's, you know, I was talking to somebody 3 hours ago about a new podcast. It has nothing to do with paranormal.
Right.
But a new podcast, and we already have the t-shirt shop. We already have, you know, everything's already there. You know, 20,000 followers on a Facebook page.
Right.
You know, already made. And that's a lot of work. You know, you'll be doing that.
I was going to say, I feel like this is a project that I will be sucked into as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, that's because you're very talented at what you do.
Well, that's the way to get me to help.
My daughter's already learned that too. Didn't she tell you that?
Yes.
Well, how old was she when she said that?
Oh, wow. She was, I think we had just started homeschooling. So she was like first grade, so maybe 6 or 7. And she told me, she asked me to make some clothes for B, her teddy bear.
Yeah.
That's a member of the family. And she told me, she said, you make the best clothes for B. And I was like, oh, that's sweet, honey. Thank you. And she goes, yeah, I learned on TV that if you tell somebody they're the best at something, then they'll do it for you or something like that. I don't know. It was so funny. Like she manipulated me and then told me how she manipulated me.
Well, that's sweet. See, she wouldn't tell you now.
No. Now
she would just simply manipulate you. People don't realize we tell these stories and stuff, and everybody's always like, oh, my kid's so smart. My kid's this great. You know, my kid's our kid is the biggest smartass. And I mean, it's without even a second's notice that she can come back.
No idea where she learned all that sarcasm from.
Right.
Dad.
I mean, she's just incredible with it. But, you know, we were talking about B, the teddy bear. Okay, B's been with her since she was a child. I mean, like
4, I think.
Like 4 years old, 3 years old. And, okay, so there's B. There's Purple Monkey, which is a purple monkey that, you know, the kind that hang on a doorknob, and they have but Purple Monkey is a nasty, dirty thing. B has always been like a middle-aged old man. That's just, you know, he's hilarious. He's got the B voice. Even when she was 4, it's the same freaking voice that she still uses. There's Salem, this big oversized fat cat. For some reason, they made this stuffed cat that was like very obese, and we got it in the town of Salem, Massachusetts. So we, you know, named it Salem. And there's Joe, the cockatoo. Okay. So they've all got personalities, and it's funny because when we bring a stuffed animal home that doesn't make the cut, like she gives them a week to find their voice. And
see how they fit in.
Yeah. If they don't find a voice or they don't have a character, they end up in the prison, which is closet. Okay. So this is just creative. This is, you know, I remember Stacey and I having conversations when she was probably 6 going, Dad, she'll stop that, right? I mean, it's perfectly normal.
Well, the problem is we picked it up. Yeah. So, you know, there's pictures of B on our Instagram.
Yeah. Oh,
like B is traveling with us.
We celebrate B's birthday. There's pictures of B on the beach. There's, you know, and the thing is, he truly has a personality. And we've even suspected that he is, you know, because of the things he would say. This brings it back to paranormal.
Right.
Because of the things he would say when she was 4 years old, we would look at each other and be like, what in the hell? You know, because when she was little, we didn't cuss in front of her.
Right.
We didn't talk about bills. We didn't talk about, you know, we were really careful with her because of things that we had heard as children, and you got to be careful because you never know if a kid hears something about it's hard to pay a bill or something, they take that serious, they take it to heart and stuff. So we were always very rainbows and gumdrops with her. And, she was away from violence. She was just very protected. But for some reason, B was a sarcastic asshole. and I mean, it's always been hilarious. It's always been the funniest stuff you could ever imagine. And Purple Monkey basically just makes a sound every now and then and some hip thrust, and it's the funniest thing ever. But the B voice is just magnificent, and it's so quick still yet to this day. Like now, it's just to entertain everybody. I mean, everybody gets entertained by B. And the other night, for instance, Stacey was just joking around with Ariana, and she said, what was it you said?
I was telling her we're watching Game of Thrones, obviously, like most of the world, and we decided to let Ariana watch it and catch up with us, but we edit the shows, like we tell her to close her eyes at the parts that she can't see. And, she loves the show because the basic part of the show is great. So I was joking around with B, and I was like, all right, B, are you ready to close your eyes? And I was like, well, wait a minute, B, you can't close your eyes. You don't have eyelids, because he's just a bear. He just has the big, the black eyes. And immediately he said, he told me that he did have eyelids. I just didn't see them because I always blink at the exact same time that he does.
And you got to understand, she says this instantly. There was no lag time. There was no thinking. There was no, and it's these kind of jokes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And trust me, regular Ariana has jokes as well. I mean, it never stops. And she is the only person on this planet who can get away with she just lets me have it, man. I mean, she will just let me have it, and she won't let me be in a bad mood. So if I'm ever in a bad mood, she will just do something. She will invade my space and do something to make me laugh.
Yep.
And so it's just really it's a hoot all the time. But speaking of everybody in the world, 18 million other people, maybe even more for that last episode, the Game of Thrones. Just we've always loved it. And like she said, letting Ariana catch up and having her turn the head is pretty interesting. You don't realize exactly how much butt there is in Game of Thrones.
It's pretty funny because we're still pretty early on. So anytime you see Littlefinger, Theon, or that little Bolton kid, we're just like, close your eyes.
Yeah.
Just close your eyes for this whole whatever's happening right now.
So I'm going to put it on record. I'm going to put the theory on record.
Okay.
So we believe, for those of you who watch Game of Thrones, not for that select few of you who like to post on Facebook that you've never seen an episode of Game of Thrones, which is okay to post that, but I get a kick out of it because it's just one of those things where people, I don't know, people don't get on there normally and go, you know what? I've never seen a single NFL game. I don't know. It's just so
they don't feel the need to tell you when they don't watch something.
It's just very odd because I've seen so many of those posts, but Game of Thrones still yet. You would think that 18 million people didn't watch it an episode. It's just funny because I see more of my friends post that they haven't ever watched one, and I think it must have something to do with intelligent people. I mean, because the intelligent people that are on my friends list seem to, always, and because I mean, if you're my friend, you've already made the cut.
Right.
You're like a Rhodes Scholar. So anyway, watching Game of Thrones, I have a theory, and that theory is shared by many people. Not a ton of people, but people nonetheless. That theory, there's two theories. It's no spoilers here. So this is spoiler free as long as you have watched the first few seasons. I think after that, it would be safe to say this. So number one, when Cersei was a little girl, she went to a wood witch and a witch in the woods. And she got to ask 3 things or whatever. And one of those things that the witch told her was that she was going to be choked to death by her younger brother. So everybody thinks it's Tyrion, the imp that she can't stand, you know, but Jaime was her twin, or is her twin, and he actually came out after her. So number one, I think somewhere around the last few episodes that Jaime will choke the crap out of Cersei. The other one is that Littlefinger is still alive, because he was the main antagonist through the entire series. He was behind everything from the first, like, you know, everything. He was the one that tried killing Bran. It was his knife. He was the one that had Lysa send the message to Winterfell about the Lannisters. Like, everything was manipulated by him
in one way or another.
Yeah, and his blood comes from Bravos. Bravos is where the faceless men is, that pull the mask off and stuff. We think that he's another character right now, that he's a faceless man. And at the end, you know, somebody will sit on the throne and pull off the mask. It'd be Littlefinger. So that'd be a horrible ending.
It would be. I hope that's not it.
But at the same time, I just kind of want to be right now. But yeah, that's the fun kind of stuff that goes into it. Speaking of fun stuff, so every now and then come across things, you know, when we're looking for stories and stuff. And if I find stories, I try to send Stacey stories throughout the week. You know, it's hard to find stories continuously. So, but luckily we live in a very weird world.
We do.
But I find stuff every now and then that just takes my fancy or tickles my, tickles my fancy?
Tickles your fancy.
Yeah. So what's your fancy actually?
I guess it's the thing that gets tickled when you like something.
Yeah.
It's like a backwards definition. I don't know.
I don't know. Don't put are you reading the back of my sheet?
Don't hold it in front of my face.
God.
Well, I didn't read it.
Yes, you did.
I just saw there was words. I can't read your handwriting. It's terrible.
What? My handwriting is not terrible.
Okay, continue.
It's my shorthand.
Oh, well, that's why I can't read it.
Oh my God. All right, so I found the top 10 worst baby names. And I mean, according to some people, right?
Right.
So I came across the top 10 worst baby names. And it's off Mum's Net. And it was because they...
You read Mum's Net a lot.
I like to stay informed.
Okay. No judgment here. Anyway, continue.
Okay. Anyway, after they posed a question, what should you never name a child and why? You know. And so I don't know. I don't think they're that terrible.
Right.
I really don't. That's why I'm kind of upset with the list. And they give like really snotty little things beside the name to tell. So number 10 is Luna.
Oh, I like that name.
I do too. But
did I named a stray cat that once?
Yes, we had a cat named Luna. You know what it says beside this one?
What?
Because it's a pet's name.
Oh, I guess it is.
Number 9, Mercedes. She's a child, not a car.
There's a car name.
I like the name Mercedes.
I like it. It's pretty.
Number 8, Alexa. Because she's probably going to set your phone off.
Don't name your kid Siri.
Number 7, Flora. Makes me think of bacteria.
It makes me think of Sleeping Beauty. The little fairies, Flora and Fauna.
I don't have a problem with Flora. Number 6 is one I really like.
Oh, what is it?
Graham.
Oh, I like Graham.
There's nothing wrong with Graham.
No, I like
Graham.
Graham.
Very woody name.
It is.
Graham, because it sounds like gray ham.
Well, yeah, if you say it wrong.
Yeah, you see, that makes me mad. It's stuff like that makes me mad. Number 5, I love number 5.
Okay.
Amelia.
Oh, Amelia's a pretty name.
I love Amelia.
You can shorten it to Amy.
Amy Pond.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. As one mom says, it reminds me of someone whiny. I don't know. You know what? That's somebody whose old man left her for an Amelia.
Yeah, she knows an Amelia from school that bullied her.
Yeah,
or
something like that.
Yeah.
You owe me a Coke. Number 4, Grace.
I like Grace.
Yeah.
That's a nice name.
Yeah, I just like saying Grace. Because
okay, I see the reason why it's probably not that great of a name.
Yeah. It also rhymes with a lot of things.
It does.
And it says there are a few accents that say it gracefully. So number 3, okay, I agree with this one. Fanny.
Oh yeah, that's a terrible name.
Yeah, it says for obvious reasons.
Obviously, yes.
Number 2 is Lana.
Oh.
And it says if it's spelled backwards, it's rather rude. Oh. But I mean...
But who's going to spell your name backwards? 5th
graders.
I suppose. But, you
hey,
know,
anal.
Kids can find a reason to make fun of you no matter what your name is.
And I really have nothing. I think number 1 should not be number 1.
Okay, what is it?
Mia?
I like Mia.
Yeah, because it means missing in action. I mean, that's...
No, that's MIA.
Yeah.
Now, if you name your kid MIA, that's different. That's totally different. Maybe that's what she means. Like, don't name your kid MIA.
Right. So it got me thinking. Mm-hmm. That was terrible names, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, terrible to be on that list. They're good names.
They're saying those are terrible names.
Right.
So I was thinking, I wonder what popular names were. Mm-hmm. We know what popular names are now.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Stuff like that's on popular TV shows or you know how people are.
I'm waiting for the next crop of Daenerys's.
Oh, you know it's coming. You know it's coming. So I went back. I was like, I wonder what the top baby names were 100 years ago.
Oh, I bet they were very biblical.
Well,
maybe.
Of course. So I want to go through those.
Okay.
The number 10 name for girls.
Mm-hmm. This is 100 years ago.
100 years ago.
Okay.
100 years ago. 1919.
Gotcha.
Number 10 is Anna.
Okay, that's still kind of popular.
Or
now.
Anna.
Mm-hmm.
I love that name.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, Frances.
Not fond of Frances.
I had a friend named Francie, so I don't have a problem with it. She was sweet.
Mm-hmm. That can be a boy's name too, Francis.
It can.
It can go either way.
It can. Mm-hmm. Number 8 is Elizabeth.
Very classic name.
Very classic.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Again, classic.
Yes.
Number 6, Mildred.
Okay,
you don't get many Mildreds anymore.
Mildred's like born a grandmother.
Well, yeah, Mildred
Mildred's like grandma.
Mildred's a more classic name.
Yes.
I'm sure there's still some family names that come through.
The thing I don't like about it is you can't even shorten it to something cute.
I know a Mildred that we call Rosie.
That's weird.
So, number 5 is Ruth.
Ruth. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Number 4 is Margaret.
I don't mind Margaret.
Very 1919. Mm-hmm. Number 3 is Dorothy.
Dorothy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So was the book out by that point?
Honestly, don't know.
I know the movie came out like 1930.
Yeah. I don't know.
1931, 1939. Somebody's going to kill me because everybody, Wizard of Oz fans are going to be like, really?
Yeah.
Number 2 is Helen.
Helen.
Yeah.
That's a very strong name for a woman.
It is. It is.
Mm-hmm.
And number 1 is Mary.
Really? The most popular name for a girl
in 1919 was Mary. Mary. So on the boys,
mm-hmm.
you could probably give me 10 names.
Probably.
And get these.
Yeah.
Number 10 is Thomas.
Of course.
Number 9 is Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8 is Edward.
Oh.
Number 7 is Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6 is George.
Right.
Number 5 is Charles. See, I love these names.
They're all very good, solid family names.
I love these names.
Yeah.
Number 4 is Robert.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's like going through all my uncles. Number 3 is James.
Right.
Number 2 is William.
Wow.
Like my son William and my grandfather William. And number 1 in 1919, you want to take a guess?
Was it John?
It was John.
It's like lots of biblical names.
When I was reading
names,
it said the most masculine name, John.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, why, yes, it is. So then I was like, well, I wonder what was popular in the 1700s. Because I was just curious at that point. Like, and you can't get like top 10 list from that,
right.
But you can get which ones were most popular going in order. So it's somewhat like
sort of like a list. Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't find 10, but
okay.
Let me give you what I got.
Okay.
Number 8.
Okay.
Molly. And this is mixed. This is the co-ed here.
Okay. Molly.
These are the ones on actual record that we see named. And number 7, Lucy.
Wow.
Lucy was in the 1700s.
That's crazy.
Lucy Goosey. Number 6 is one you really like, Oliver.
I like Oliver.
Yeah.
That's a cute name.
Number 5 is Jonas.
Oh, well, there you are. Jonas. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Number 4 is Elizabeth.
That is just a classic name that's going to stick around forever.
Number 3 is Lydia.
Really?
Yeah, Lydia was around in the 1700s. Number 2 is the biggest surprise for me because I can't even pronounce it correctly. And they say that it was, I mean, it's obviously so popular, okay, that it's the number 2 most popular name in all of the 1700s. But it died off. The name just died off.
What is it?
Melatia.
Huh.
I mean, I'm talking English here.
Right.
Melatiah. Malaysia.
Maybe.
Number 2 there. Melatia.
Melatiah.
It's probably Melatiah.
That is a very odd name.
Isn't it?
Yes.
To be above Lydia, Elizabeth, Oliver.
Right. I can see why it died off.
Yeah,
it doesn't really roll off the tongue.
It does not roll off the tongue, but it's the strangest thing to me because I didn't expect to find a name that's just gone.
Right, that you didn't hear of.
Yeah,
Well,
that I've never heard of.
People don't really name their kids like Hezekiah anymore either.
Yeah, but you still hear a Hezekiah.
I suppose.
You do.
You do.
But, Melatiah is not one of those. I just think it's strange.
It is strange.
Okay, so number 1.
Like you don't see it in the baby name books either.
No. I mean, and there's not like a famous Melatiah from history,
Maybe that's why the name died off.
It's like no one ever did anything with the name, and they're like, well, screw this.
Yeah, that's just for not people that aren't.
Obviously, they're cursed. So the number 1 name in the 1700s, you want to take a guess?
John?
No, actually not.
Oh, what was it?
Aaron.
Oh, like A Aaron or E Aaron?
No, A Aaron.
Oh, well, I mean, it's a biblical name too, so.
Right. So, I mean, it's there. So I would be done, but I'm not.
Okay, what have you got now?
So I really wanted to go one step more.
Okay.
So I'm like, I wonder what the popular names were in the Middle Ages. I don't have many.
Okay.
But.
Can I guess one?
Yeah.
Arthur.
No, there's not an Arthur.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Really.
What were some of the popular names?
Well, there's Matilda.
Of course.
There's Agnes. Alice.
Right.
I love Alice, by the way.
Alice is a nice name.
William, and the most popular that they found in the Middle Ages.
Right.
John.
Of course, John.
Yes, because it's a very masculine name.
It is very masculine.
The funny thing is, I was going to be really funny and keep going back, but when I went back again, it was all like Aphrodite, and because it was like, I'm like, okay, we're getting into the gods. So I'll just stop with that.
Well, it just proves that some names really stand the test of time.
Yeah, really. I mean,
well, I know a lot of families, they pass those names down. Like even when you do your ancestry and stuff, you can see the same names.
How many freaking Johns and Williams are?
Yeah, your family passes John Edwards down and just changes the middle name.
Yeah.
Like the middle name just changes, but it's all like all these John Edwardses.
It's unreal. There's Johns, I mean, all the way back. John Edwards. It's really crazy.
I have my ancestry because my maiden name is Fish.
Right.
And so I have a book, somebody that I connected to with online had sent me copies of pages of books of the Fish ancestry for my line that went all the way back.
It's like Beta.
And well, funny you should say that. There is one of my ancestors, his name was Preserved. I don't really know why they named him that.
That was his first name?
His name was, that's what it says in the book.
Preserved
Fish. That was
Preserved
his name.
Fish.
Yes. I promise you, I'll show you the page in the book. It's very strange. There's a lot of odd names in my family. I guess when your last name's Fish, I don't know.
Just say hell with it.
Yeah, whatever. I mean,
that was probably because you were fishermen, right? Or because you smelled,
I think we just smelled bad. I don't know. I don't think that, I'd have to look at it again. It's been a while since I looked at it, but there were some, like England and stuff, and there was a lot. Some.
Well, the origin of these names are supposedly
right, but it's not like Fisher. Like it didn't change from Fisher or anything like that. It's always just been Fish, and I know there's been some military, like a lot of military down through my family and stuff like that. But
maybe they're I don't know. A lot of them were Navy,
yes.
So they're just like, why not? Right, we're fish. Might as well protect the water. I don't know.
So, interesting.
You have an interesting family. It's a weird family. Like it's very strange. There's a lot of twists and turns.
Well, there are a lot of odd family names. Like we've got a Penelope and a Prudence, a Muriel. You know, not very common. Not like John. You know, my dad's name was Alden. His dad's name was Alden. You know, it's just very unusual names.
Well, I mean, we're from the South.
True. My family's not from the South.
Yeah. So being from the South and true Appalachian hillbillies, you know, my grandfather on my paternal side met my grandmother in a coal camp in, you know, the early 1900s. You know, so he had a pretty cool name though. His name was Everett Banner. You know, that's a cool name.
It is.
She was Mabel. You know, but all the kids, as I was talking about my uncles, you had my dad, John, and you had James, and you had Robert, and you had Joe, you know, so very much right down there. And but
common standard
but
names.
The girls were like Phyllis and Doris, and which we say Dorse because we're from. I honestly thought her name was. I remember spelling her name before and thinking it was Dorse because my family were such rednecks that that's just how it sounded.
Right.
Where's Dorse? You know, but
kids are funny that way.
Well, I mean, all my family's just so Southern. I mean, we had a Linda Kay, you know, we had that's just, everybody was Sissy and, you know, stuff like that. Really crazy stuff, but it's all Woody regular names. So it's, and you know, that's why when I named Ariana, I wanted to be, I didn't want to name her Sue. Right. Not that there's anything wrong with Sue.
Right.
It's just we have a lot of freaking Sues and stuff. So I was trying to break that Southern stuff. But yeah, my family is deep root, freaking, you know, Irish mountain people.
Right.
And you're not.
No, absolutely I'm not.
Yeah. So, and it's funny enough because they even make mention of that every now and then about you, you know. It's always the fact that, you know, she don't go to the same church we go to.
Well, ever since our book came out, a lot of your family members have been insinuating that maybe I need to be doing like things for them, like curses or
yeah, like, so it's always been a running joke. Okay. When my mom came across you know, some books about, I don't know, witchcraft. And
it was books that I had like when I was in college and I was doing papers and stuff.
but they were like freaking, you know, 20 of them.
That's because we don't throw books away.
Yeah, so this was years ago. This was like, I don't know, 18 years ago. So there's always been that joke. So when the book came out, it was just obvious, right? And so now, yeah, it's funny. People, we get a lot of, not just family. There's a lot of people like, hey, so this is kind of weird. Got this thing going on at work, and I mean, it sure would be nice if I got this promotion, but it's not really for personal gain. It's the fact that, you know, well, it's I deserve it, so that's not personal gain, right? So yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun, and since the book came out. But you know, speaking of that book, what's that book called again?
It's called Till Death and Beyond: The Haunted Journey of John and Stacey Edwards. Do you know them?
I've heard of them. I know the book's pretty popular. Where can you find that?
You can go to paranormalsideshow.com and have all the links for it, or you can just go straight to Amazon and search it.
Yeah.
And leave a review once you read it.
It'll pop right up, won't it?
It will.
Yeah. So you definitely need to get one if you don't have one already.
Yes. And if you don't want to buy it from our website, if you don't want to buy it from Amazon, you can come to Scarefest and buy it from us personally. Yeah,
there's a couple places you can come to this summer. That's one of them, yes. You know, we just did, speaking of Scarefest, someone we'll be doing Scarefest with at the same time, that is Alan Marston, friend of the show. And we brought Alan on for just a Bobby Dazzler of a conversation. And it was incredible. So it started off as, you know, one thing led in the other things, 2-hour conversation of just, we really deep dive some very interesting topics, and I really think the listeners are going to just love this. And it's available on our Patreon for our Patreon listeners. Our patrons can access it by just going into the page, the Paranormal Sideshow Patreon page, and if you're a member there, $5 member, you will have access to this, with all the other access to our archives of the Haunted South show that gets updated every week. But this is episode 2 of Realm of Shadows, episode 1 with David Weatherly, episode 2, Alan Marston. That will be going up here shortly, probably a day or so after this airs. After this episode airs. But the Realm of Shadows episode 2 is going to be now available, and it is just a very interesting conversation. We go into a harrowing experience that Alan had. We go into some paranormal locations, some very popular paranormal locations, and what kind of effect has paranormal investigating and the paranormal boom possibly had on the other side. What kind of effect has it had on the spirit world? Because it's never happened before, right? This is all a new phenomenon that's relatively new. And speaking of the history of the world, 15 years is new. And so it's been going on with, such a big boom. And we talk about the big new crop of paranormal television. We really go down a lot of different roads, but I really encourage you, if you're not a patron, you're going to love this conversation. And it's available to you for $5 a month, and that's on patreon.com. Heck, if you want to get it and just do it and cancel after a month, that's okay too. We won't hold anything against you there. So you got the access to all the archives, and of course there's other levels too, where you can go all the way up, get a T-shirt, even get the book and the T-shirt and everything, the whole 9 yards. Pretty cool stuff. And of course you can do that by going to paranormalsideshow.com and just following the links if you want to. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. Before we shift gears and get into the news. There was something, every now and then I find my own, articles, and I just think they're interesting, but they're not really something, they're not exactly news, but I just find them interesting. And one of those came out in the last couple of days, and it was on sciencealert.com. Very interesting article. And the name of the article is, Here's Why the Idea of Alien Life Now Seems Inevitable and Possibly Imminent. I go into the whole article is very well written. I encourage people to go and actually check this out. But the long and short of it is talking about how something we talk about a lot. Not so long ago, it seemed, like there was a lot of believers, but it seemed somewhat impossible, or, maybe it would happen, maybe not. But there is a lot of scientific evidence now in fact, it's just chemistry, is like it says in here, that it's imminent possibility that there is alien life out there. And it says, while life is a special kind of complex chemistry, the elements involved are nothing special. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and so on are the most abundant elements in the universe. Complex organic chemistry is surprisingly common. Amino acids, just like the ones that make up every protein in our bodies, have been found in the tails of comets, and there are other organic compounds in Martian soil. Now, I'll get back to that in a second. 6,500 light years away, a giant cloud of space alcohol floats among the stars. I remember that story. Habitable planets seem to be common too. The first planet beyond our solar system was discovered in 1995. I remember that, and it was like, wow. It's in the Goldilocks zone. Since then, astronomers have cataloged thousands. Based on this catalog, astronomers from the University of California, Berkeley, worked out that there could be as many as 40 billion Earth-sized exoplanets in the so-called habitable zone around their star, where temperatures are mild enough for liquid water to exist on the surface. Think about that, folks. 40 billion with a B, in the habitable zone. There's even a potentially Earth-like world orbiting our nearest neighboring star, Proxima Centauri, at just 4 light years away. That system, they say, is close enough for us to even reach using current technology.
And that would be using the Breakthrough Starshot project launched by Stephen Hawking in 2016. And it's talking about life being robust. It talks about the oldest fossils ever found here are 3.5 billion years old. But there's clues in our DNA that suggest life could have been, started 4 billion years ago. And again, I want to say billion. Mm-hmm. So I've talked about this before. Think back. We've got history that goes, a couple thousand, and it gets murky there, right? You go 5,000 back, and you're like, wow, ancient times. We might have this clue or that clue. And then you go way, even some archaeological sites now are going to back about 10,000 BC. But it's, we're talking 4 billion. So how many times has man come and gone in that time period? Just in my opinion, it's amazing what could have happened and probably did happen in 4 billion years. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's still an estimate. But our planet, the research they have shows that our planet was inhabited as soon as it was habitable. So there was no time there. So as soon as those elements were together, there was life. Okay. And the definition of habitable has proven to be a rather flexible concept too, because life survives, as we found out, especially in the last couple of years with a lot of stories we've done on this show. Yeah. Floating on a lake of sulfuric acid, inside barrels of nuclear waste, in water superheated to 122 degrees, into wastelands of Antarctica, and in rocks 5 kilometers below ground. All stories we've done on this show.
Yeah, in places that are closed up that haven't been touched in thousands of years, and just
places they thought it was impossible to have life.
Absolutely.
So all these clues are happening at the same time. We're finding these planets. Some of these conditions seem to be duplicated elsewhere in the solar system. And they talk about Mars was once warm and wet, and was probably a very fertile ground for life before the Earth. Today, Mars still has liquid water underground. One gas strongly associated with life on Earth, methane, has already been found in the Martian atmosphere, and at levels that mysteriously rise and fall with the seasons. Martians, the thing about that is they really theorize that possibly at one time, because of the running water and because of all that, it's just there, that life was all over Mars. Possibly we come from Mars. And it's always been
very possible.
It's always been one of the theories, but now there's a lot of stuff that kind of backs that up. They talk about Europa, how there's a possibility there.
Of course, they always hit those same planets and moons that they have put in other articles.
Right. And the most, the biggest and most interesting part to me on this article that really caught me was they were talking about a second Genesis. And they said a discovery, if it came, somewhere in the universe,
right,
could turn the world of biology upside down. All life on Earth is related, descended ultimately from the first living cell to emerge some 4 billion years ago. Bacteria, fungus, cacti, cockroaches are all cousins, okay? And they all share the same basic molecular machinery. DNA that makes RNA and RNA that makes protein. The second sample of life, though, might represent a second Genesis, totally unrelated to us. Perhaps it would use a different coding system in its DNA, or it might not have DNA at all, but some other method of passing on genetic information. By studying a second example of life, we could begin to figure out which parts of the machinery of life are universal and which are just particular accidents of our primordial soup. Perhaps amino acids are always used as essential building blocks, perhaps not. And we might even be able to work out some universal laws of biology the same way we have for physics, not to mention new angles on the question of origin of life itself. And, so it goes into that, and it's like, perhaps life is infectious on the other hand, and that's going with, microbes and Mars and asteroids hitting and stuff. But then it goes to the big thing. It's like, or we find that the DNA is exactly the same, and then then it opens up that whole big.
Then everything hits the fan,
right? Because
right.
They had been here before, and it's just that whole question of aliens. It got me really excited here recently because, as last week when we broke into the podcast and we talked about the government going into the identification for the UAPs, they're UFOs,
right?
And that's very exciting in so many ways, and a lot of places picked that up because it was so exciting.
Right.
You know, mainstream news even had stuff on there about it, and all of this. I saw an article today where it really gives the credit to the Two to Stars Academy, where they started that conversation. They had, you know, congressional evidence. They really brought it to the forefront. Right. And what happened, it said on there, was the military finally got to the point where they're like, well, we cannot say, you know, we can't deny this.
Right.
So that really, you know, and because some people were wishy-washy on that, on To the Stars Academy when they first started, but you got to give them credit because now it's out there in the forefront, and they're like, you know, there's something happening. Well,
and it's being talked about without being made a joke all the time.
Well, yeah.
I mean, people still kind of joke about it,
well,
but
but not
like it used to be. No. Not like what people don't wear tinfoil hats and.
Well, no, I mean,
when they talk about it, you know,
because what's being said, you can look at it. You can look at it a couple of ways, but either way, it's terrifying, right? Because in one instance, it's aliens, and they're visiting us from a light years away, with technology light years beyond us, and studying us, whatever. Okay, or it's something that we really don't know what in the heck it is. You know, there's a theory that maybe it's us from the future, okay? And they're trying to keep that hidden, where we're trying to hide it from us or something. And
timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah, timey-wimey stuff, okay? That would be freaky in its own sense. And then there's the unknown, right? That third mysterious, you know, what is it? I've heard people say it's demons, you know, and it's this and that. I mean, and I won't laugh at that because we've talked about before, people put this big metaphysical thing on biblical actions, and you know, like it's a big cloud of smoke and fire, and it's like John. But what if they're all in machines? You know, you don't know.
Right.
Nobody does, and so I don't know. It's the very fact that they say there's things we can't identify, and they don't make sense. They go too fast. They move in ways we can't. We're going to have to log them and see what they are. Stuff we knew already, but it's kind of like when your parents finally admit, you know, it's okay until they say, yeah, there is a monster in your closet.
Right.
Let us know if you hear it scratching.
Right. So we can come in and take care of it.
Yeah, we're going to have to take care of it. and that's just, it's all well and good until that happens. And that's really got me excited and thinking, and you know, like, wow, is Stacey right? Have they been doing slow disclosure for years? All those thoughts and more I will leave you with as we have a little time for paranormal news.
She's the GOAT of paranormal news, traveling the globe to find you the stories you didn't know you needed to hear, and the stories she knows you'll never forget. It's time for Stacey Edwards and Paranormal News.
All right, so let's get to the news.
Let's.
All right, so this first story is really interesting. It's about a tweet that was made by the Indian Army, you know, in India.
I didn't think it was the Apaches.
And they tweeted out a picture saying that their mountaineering expedition team has sighted mysterious footprints of the Yeti. Or I guess they would call the abominable snowman.
I don't know if it's more impressive that the Indian Army has a Twitter feed or that they just jumped straight to finding Yeti.
Well, first of all, everybody has a Twitter feed, and these footprints measured 32 by 15 inches.
Wait a second, like 32 inches long?
Yeah, by 15 inches wide, and the stride on the footprints was huge. Like there's a picture you can look at. They measured them and everything, and so
32 inches long. They must have an enormous Swanson sticker.
The mountaineering expedition team. You'd think that they see, you know, wildlife all the time,
right? So
they had no idea what these footprints were made by. They just assumed a Yeti, and they were found near the Makalu base camp, which is in Nepal. It's near the Makalu Baran National Park, so it's in Nepal. And they mentioned in this article about a report that was in the National Geographic about the British explorer Eric Shipton, who was searching for an alternative route to the Mount Everest and first captured the footprints of the Yeti in 1951, kind of close to this area, sort of on the Nepal-Tibet border, which was close to where they've seen these footprints. So it was really cool that they immediately took that photo, that they shared it,
right?
And they just were like, "Look, Yeti footprints. We found it. It's here." So.
Well, I mean, those guys are like flirting with disaster all the time. I mean, so they don't give a crap, right? They're just like, well, let's just tweet this out. We're not going to hide it. What do they have to lose? I mean, those guys have to patrol where they don't get full breath, you know?
Right.
I mean, so Sub-Zero, they're passing stupid English tourists that have frozen to death, you know? I mean, they leave the bodies there.
Right.
So it's just, I don't blame them. But that is a miraculous story because it's coming from an official source.
Right.
And it's coming from a place where we've had many, many sightings.
Yeah, and they say that this is the first time that they've sighted the footprints, and so then they shared it. So it's not like they've seen it before and hid it or anything like that. They found the footprints, they took the picture, they measured them, then they shared what they found. So,
you know, when I was a child, I was so happy when I found the word Yeti.
Right.
Because I knew Bigfoot was in America. Okay. And I knew that the one over there, because I've always been fascinated with like the Himalayas and Nepal. I don't know why. Very fascinated.
Right.
But I hated that I had to call it the abominable snowman.
Right.
Because I couldn't say abominable.
Right. And
the more I thought about it, the more problems I had.
Right. The harder it was, the more you tried.
And I would always go with abominable. And
that's close.
So
that's close.
You know, it's kind of funny though because I would, you know, I'm
you could
sure
always say Bumble. So they call him in Rudolph.
I could call him a Bumble.
A Bumble.
You love the Bumble,
I
don't you?
love the Bumble. Bumbles bounce. Yes, they do.
Yes. So let's get off the Misfit Toys for a second and go back to the gravity of this. Official source tweets this out. Can you imagine the United States Army Rangers?
Right.
Okay, say they're going up Mount St. Helens for some reason.
Right.
And they find Bigfoot prints. And they just take pictures and tweet them out.
Somebody would lose their job.
Lose their heads probably.
Right.
That's the cool thing about this. And you got to put it in perspective like that, right?
Right.
So this Indian Army is near, I think that's near disputed lands and stuff, but very interesting. I mean, it's a very mystical place anyway. Very cool. And to measure that size, I mean, it's not like they want tourism. I mean, it's not like people are going to come to this, you know.
Right.
It's not going to do anything for them. So it's not even going to bring them notoriety or money, more than likely.
No, but it was awesome of them to share the pictures. I love that they had pictures.
Yeah.
And, you know, measured them and all that.
We don't get
seriously.
We don't get stories like this very often. We get stories from, you know, Jim Bob Billy Bo, who had a cousin that went there, and this is his artist rendition of it. Okay. We don't get stories from an actual official source like that. But, you know, up there in those monasteries, those monks are just straight up. They'll be like, yep, he exists. I mean, there's no doubt whatsoever. And what bothers me about it is the thing everybody wants to do is like, oh my God, is there any way? Is there any way? I'll pray to everybody you have. Can I see the skull? Can I see the skull, please? You know, I'll wear this hat. I'll drink this piss, whatever. And they get in there, and then the first thing they want to do is take a hair. They're like, I just want to prove it. And, you know, and that would make me so, if I had guarded. So my great granddaddy, he's the one that found this dead freaking ape and cut the top of his head off and put it in this jar. I'd be pretty mad if all these generations had guarded this, you know, and this was sacred to us. This is sacred lands. And the first thing I do when I show you is you're like, yeah, we believe you. We really do. But it's everybody else that might have a problem. So we're just going to take a teensy weensy little hair, and then we're going to go get something, and we're going to call it inconclusive. So, because we can't actually say that it's something we've never seen before, because then they'll kill us. You know, that's what makes me mad. It's like, I would be happy with just seeing it. Like, just, you know,
Right.
just tell me your secrets. I'm not going to try to disprove you. Tell me what you tell everybody else. Tell me what you tell the young boy who just starts here and in this monastery. You know, cool enough that they have these secrets there and that they feel that they need to protect them and they need to keep these there like holy relics.
Right.
It makes you think, are we dealing with giants? Well, again, you know, it's that all those questions, right, that we always have with the Bigfoots.
Right.
And just very, very cool. I love the story. I love the fact of where it could lead us. So
Well, it's interesting because you don't ever hear about the U.S. Army having any kind of sightings like that. But that doesn't mean they don't. We just don't hear about it.
So, you know, they were in the Holy of Holies. They were in Iraq. Okay. Now, any U.S. military people on here that were, you know, deployed, you were on the ground in Iraq, I would love to hear stories of stuff you may have found because you know what was under your feet. I mean, everything. The cradle of life, if you will. All kinds of unbelievable artifacts. And of course, we've seen what terrible things happened with, you know, radical groups that ISIS and stuff that destroyed, went on that rampage of just destroying all these unbelievable ancient sites, right? But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we found things, but we are just mum the word.
Well, maybe they'll take a page out of the Navy's book. You know, the Navy's letting the people report the UAPs.
Yeah, they're UFOs.
So maybe the Army will devise a way for its members to, you know, report weird sightings of things in the woods. Or
there's so many strange things. I mean, you go back to there's structures on Earth right now that they found that just, you know, just civilizations that are dug underground. That just go down and down and down, level after level after unbelievable technology, really, for the time to be able to make it, and it's still all there. You get to in Egypt, some of the things they have again, like in the ground and stuff that are unbelievable. I mean, to even get down there, like weight wise, and how do they move it, and it's just the world's so full of wonders. You know, they're finding stuff when they go on these. You know, even in war and research and recon and stuff, you know, they find stuff, man. It's, I would love to know the secrets that somebody knows.
right.
That should be our other spin-off show. Secrets that somebody knows, you know, and
But then they wouldn't be secrets anymore.
we could just,
We
we
told
could,
them.
well, it doesn't matter if we only have one show a year. I'm making it right now. Listen. So if you're listening to us, and you work for a secret government agency, you work for a not secret government agency, but you do secret things there. You work for a government of another country other than the one we're in. You just happen to know secrets and secrets that you can't tell, but you're dying to tell because listen to me. Do you really want to keep that in anymore? Wouldn't you love to just let it out? It'd make such a big weight off of your chest, and you don't have to tell us who you are. You don't. All you have to do is get a hold of us, and we will do a special Patreon show, and it's secrets that somebody knows. And we will spend that whole time, even if we just have to write down everything you say because you don't want your voice done. We'll let Stacey act like she's your, you know, she'll read like she's you. And we'll say that's your hidden voice, you know, but this is your opportunity.
So it could be like deathbed confessions, but you don't have to be dying.
Right. We give you the absolute virtual pinky swear. Here, give me your pinky, Stacey.
Okay, pinky, here you
All
go.
right. Literally, we are pinky swearing right now on the fact that we will not give away your identity, even under torture. Okay, so if you get a hold of us, no matter what they do to us, you know, no matter what they do to Stacey, I will not tell what you told us. Well, I mean, I'm going to tell what you told us on our show, but don't worry about it because your bosses would have to like actually become Patreon members, and then I know who they were.
There you are.
So they can't kill you because I would have General Mad Dog as a patron. So anyway, I like to keep that open. I just want people to know, we're not going to sell you out. So just let us know. Or if you are a government agency and you're looking for someone else to bring into the fold, I'll never tell anybody. So I'm a very hypocritical person.
A closed book. All right. Well, let's move on to the next story. And I've got a couple of stories that sort of go together here. And they're a little bit disturbing, but we'll just work through them. So the first one is about a simulated asteroid threat that they're going to do this week. And it's one of those tests where they, do the whole simulation of what's going to happen and they respond to it like it's really happening. So it's NASA and FEMA and other agencies.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that are responding to a simulated threat of an impending asteroid strike. So the
doesn't have to have the United Nations in there too, does it?
It just says other agencies.
The Trilogy of Terror.
It doesn't really say. So it's an entirely fictional scenario where it centers around an asteroid with like a 1 in 100 chance of impacting our planet. And that's because that's the threshold that they agreed that the organizations around the world have to take action together.
Yeah, but there's one that I know that a while back I seen one that was coming in like 2022.
Yeah. We'll get there.
Okay. Oh, really?
We'll get there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in the list here.
Okay. All right.
So this is an entirely fictional scenario, and the hypothetical space rock is up to like 300 meters wide, and supposedly it'll reach Earth in 7 years. And so they have to take this scenario, and part of the exercise, they have to like monitor the approach and calculate where it's likely to hit, how much damage it will cause, and what they would do to try and keep it from hitting, and what they would do if it did hit, that sort of thing. And now this isn't the first time they've done this. It's like the 6th time that these agencies have kind of cooperated with this kind of scenario. And they, claim that it really helped them in like the whole planetary defense community to understand what they need to know for the disaster management. So they've planned one of these for this week, and that's all the information they're really giving you. It's not alarming in itself that they're doing that, but it is something that's coming up. Mm-hmm. So going along with that, there's also another story where the NASA administrator, Jim Bridenstine, he was speaking at the Planetary Defense Conference in Washington, D.C., and he talks
There's a Planetary Defense Conference?
There is, in Washington, D.C., and he was talking about how we have issues with meteor warning, and he calls for some cooperation. He doesn't feel like that the risk posed by meteor crashes was taken seriously enough.
Can I just say something?
Mm-hmm.
Can you not see Jeff Goldblum playing that character?
Absolutely.
In front of Congress,
mm-hmm.
going,
mm-hmm.
I appreciate it, Senator, but I just don't think
mm-hmm.
that you're mm-hmm. taking this serious enough. My research shows. Does your research show that?
Right.
I'm sure it does, Mr. Kepper.
Well, he pointed out the event where the meteorite that exploded over Russia, in 2013.
Oh, yes.
And, it had 30 times the energy of the atomic bomb at Hiroshima, injured a bunch of people. And
blew out all the windows in Russia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, it really opened a lot.
But it blew out a lot of windows.
It did. It really opened a lot of eyes, though.
Right.
That this sort of thing can happen. And one thing he said I thought was really interesting. He said, this is a quote, he said, "This is not about Hollywood. This is not about movies. This is about ultimately protecting the only planet we know right now to host life." Do you think that's an interesting quote, the way he worded that?
It's weird.
Yeah. Like protecting the only planet we know right now to host life.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's like all laden with weird things. But anyway, so he feels like we're not taking it seriously enough. The whole threat of, objects crashing into the earth.
It's like they're having war with fruit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're not taking the war serious enough.
Exactly.
They're showing them spiders in boxes.
In matchboxes.
Yeah.
So, we did that story.
What did the soldiers do? Well, they were bloody interested. There were spiders in little matchboxes. And
they asked to see the spiders again. So we did that story last year where the White House had asked for an action plan to, for NASA to detect and track and characterize a lot of the near Earth objects. And
Right.
they were looking for ideas on ways to possibly deflect, things that
Like
could
the
possibly...
Star Wars thing. Yeah.
Right, and we joked about some of the plans.
Yeah.
And earlier this month, NASA awarded a contract to SpaceX,
Right.
Elon Musk,
Of course.
that will have them provide launch services for the agency's double asteroid redirection test, which is the DART mission, which we talked about also, which is testing our capability of deflecting an asteroid by colliding a spacecraft with it at high speed, like trying to get it off its trajectory. That's their plan. And it cost $69 million, that mission.
Elon Musk probably has that in his wallet.
Probably. So
Elon Musk is a deity.
he has his hand in a lot of little places, doesn't he?
Well, that's a weird way of saying it, but yeah, I mean, I don't know about his preferences, but I mean, I admire the guy too.
Well,
Talk about laden comments.
Brendan Stein, when he was speaking, he admitted
Brendan Stein.
that the space agency
Is that his full name or is that a first and last
that's
name?
his last name.
Oh.
His name's Jim Brendan Stein.
Oh. I thought, what a creative name. You made it sound like a German.
Like Brendan Stein.
Brendan Stein. It's like when the Nazis came over and Operation Paperclip and they're trying to hide their real identity. It's just like, excuse me, I haven't seen you around the lab before. What's your name? Oh, Brendan Stein. All right, well.
Well, Jim, he admitted during his talk that the space agency had a long way to go to meet the goal of characterizing 90% of the near Earth objects. Like that was the goal that they wanted them to do. And they haven't met that goal. So he feels like they really need to step up what they're doing. Take it more seriously, work on it a little harder.
Sorry, I'm really confused now because I think Stein would be more of a Jewish name, wouldn't it?
Probably. You're still on the name, aren't
Well,
you?
yeah. I mean, it sounded good, and I don't know. It's oh well. It's still a funny joke.
It is.
All right,
Okay.
so back to the story.
Okay. So we had the story about the test, and then we have the story about Jim Brendenstein talking about how we need to step up our...
Yeah, because Jeff Goldblum saying we're not doing enough.
We're not doing enough. We're not taking it seriously.
Right, they're making fun of him.
All right, so that leads me into this last story. And this is also a story. It's off the NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory website. And it's a story that's also talking about the Planetary Defense Conference.
So you get on me about being on a mum site, and you're on the Jet Propulsion Laboratory site.
Well, they have a lot of space news on there.
You ever think we're reversed?
Yes. Yes, I do. So this is a story about the asteroid that you were just talking about a few minutes ago, and it's called Apophis, and it was discovered in June 2004. And the reason they were talking about it is because they are talking about how on April 13th of 2029, it will do its flyby of Earth. This asteroid will fly within 19,000 miles above the surface. That is the same distance as some of our satellites.
Oh, yeah.
That is ridiculously close.
It's going to hit some of our satellites.
That is ridiculously
at the
close.
least.
And so they're talking about, they've got the whole trajectory. They've been tracking it. And they said at one point it will travel more than the width of the full moon within a minute, and it will get as bright as the stars in the Little Dipper. And they're so excited, these scientists are super excited because it's going to give them an opportunity to study it up close, and personal. So whenever they first discovered it, initially, their calculations revealed that the asteroid had a 2.7% chance of impacting the Earth. But they've since ruled out the possibility. They don't believe that it's going to impact the Earth.
Dude.
Because they've been able to track it a lot
They
closer.
don't freaking know.
They don't actually. Well, here's the thing, is it's going to fly by on April 13th, 2029. They know this. But they don't actually know what's going to happen when it flies by, like if Earth's gravity is going to do something to it. They're saying that,
Jesus Christ.
that it's going to fly by, and then it's going to fly by again 7 years later. And they claim that it is not going to hit us either time. But my problem is they don't know what's going to happen the first time it goes by. And so they can't accurately say until the first time it flies by that it isn't going to hit us. Now, here's where it gets weird. You ready for this? The first time it flies by, April 13th, 2029, is a Friday the 13th. The second time it flies by will be 7 years later, April 13th, 2036. That is Easter Sunday.
Oh my God.
That is a 7-year difference, which we just talked about in our little scenario that they're testing. An asteroid's going to hit the Earth in 7 years.
Wow.
That's the test scenario.
Wow.
So that's weird. And the name of this asteroid, Apophis, that's the Egyptian god of chaos. That's what they named it after, but there's numbers before it. That's not the full name. The full name is 99942 Apophis.
Oh my God.
That is the name of the asteroid.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot of numerological stuff going on there. If you turn it over, you get the 666, and you can add the numbers up. It comes up to 13. I mean, just a lot of, I read this other article where they were putting together a lot of these different little weird coincidences.
What about the 666 flipping the nines?
Exactly. And the fact that they named it after the deity that embodied chaos. And it did say, this one article that I read, not the article I have here, not the NASA one, but this other article that I was reading, was talking about how they claimed at one point that it wouldn't hit the Earth unless it hit this keyhole, this gravitational keyhole, they were calling it. And it's this very specific spot above the Earth at a certain, I think they said it was like 18,000 and some miles above the Earth. And if it hits this specific gravitational keyhole, then there's more of a chance that it'll impact Earth.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Like the guys, the technicians on the Death Star, they're like,
Yeah, there's just that little tiny flaw.
It's indestructible except for this little, I always think in a Family Guy. I love that. Like when Stewie starts fading, he's like, oh, hold on a second. Why would we have, it's just classic. So you know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
I mean, ever since I was a kid, and I've talked about this quite a few times, but this one is like the most accurate one yet. They were just off by a few years.
Right.
I mean,
Thundar, the Barbarian. The year 1994. From out of space comes a runaway planet, hurtling between the Earth and the Moon, unleashing cosmic destruction. Man's civilization is cast in ruin. 2,000 years later, Earth is reborn. A strange new world rises from the old. A world of savagery, super science, and sorcery.
Super science.
One man bursts his bonds to fight for justice. With his companions, Ookla the Mock and Princess Ariel, he pits his strength, his courage, and his fabulous sun sword against the forces of evil.
It's like the whole backstory in the intro of the cartoon.
there is no way to describe. There's no way to accurately describe how much I love that entire thing. Okay? Every part of my being wants to be somehow catapulted into that dystopian future where I break my chains with my sun sword and my companion Ookla the Mock and Princess Ariel just to right the wrongs, the injustices done by these post-apocalyptic evil super science and sorcery. I just love it. Absolutely adore it. God. And the whole intro to that cartoon, to anybody who has seen it, and hopefully a lot of you have, when that runaway planet, when it goes between the Earth and the Moon, it like pulls, you can see it pull the atmosphere of the moon with it, and that causes the tidal waves and the the volcanoes and all that crap, man. It's just really like similar.
Well, I just thought these stories all lined up very oddly. And, we're not talking about a little asteroid here. We're talking about 340 meters wide. That's 1,100 feet wide.
Wow.
It's huge. And it gives you the timeline here of where you'll be able to see it the first time it passes. And I do believe that it will miss us the first time. Like, I think they really do know that. My concern is the second time around. After it passes the first time and they don't really know what's going to happen after that. They say they do, but
Well,
Very strange.
okay, so every year, when your phone goes from, we've talked about this. So 10 years ago, your phone couldn't pick your butt. You know, I mean,
Right.
now your phone can produce a new butt. Your phone can do everything, right? It can control the sun. I mean, by 2029, I'm just saying our technology probably can shoot a laser
Probably.
from space already, can probably shoot a laser and disintegrate this thing because we have lasers already on Navy ships. We do.
I agree.
Go to YouTube, Navy laser, look it up. We've got this technology already. Imagine as fast as we quadruple technology year after year. At that time, we can just shoot our AI robots up on this thing. They'll tap dance and just rip it to shreds, right?
Right.
Or it'll be the real funny thing where we try to knock it off course and it actually makes it hit us.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, it's just, I find it odd because of all the things that are going on lately. The space race, the urgency to find a way to deflect asteroids, the people wanting to study asteroids, people wanting to mine them. It just seems like it all came up all of a sudden, and then there's this. And, you know, it kind of all coincides. It's all very strange. Like maybe there's more to it than they're not telling us.
Mars mission, going back to the moon,
Exactly.
which has been promised now. You know, there's a lot of stuff. It's exciting for us,
It is.
being the nerds we are,
Right.
because it means that we are actually exploring again, and we went many years without that. So I think it gives us something as humans. You know, I talked about it last week. It gives us something to unify about, you know.
It does.
As Reagan said, you know, imagine if there was one threat off world that we all had to come together as a person, as one people to fight that threat.
Right.
And he said an alien threat, you know, and ever since he said that, I obviously thought, man, he knows something, because he even said that to during E.T., you know, during that famous moment when he was screening E.T. in the Oval Office, or not the Oval Office, they're just, you know, in the theater in the White House.
Right.
So he turns around and you know, he tells Spielberg, you know, he's like, you wouldn't believe how accurate this is.
Wow.
And that's famously what was said when Reagan watched it. You know, that's interesting. You got Clinton when he went up there to the White House, you know, and wanted so much just to get disclosure and find out stuff, you know, and everything. So I don't know, man. I think that we've known things for a very long time. So I think the technology's there. When they talk about doing something, it's already done. That's what I've always been told by any of my friends, like Special Forces friends.
Right.
And they talked about in the 80s the Star Wars defense missile system, right? Where you could basically, like satellite wise, you know, knock down nukes and all this stuff. I'm sure that we have something that'll
out of all those millions of satellites that are orbiting the Earth right now, there's got to be something up there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll just have to follow the story. I just thought that the whole timing of all that was a little strange.
No, it is very strange. Numerology is always strange. It's like the story that came out about the Pope. We're not doing the story.
Right.
But I have to admit that the numbers were strange. Okay, we don't do those kind of stories.
Right.
Because they're insensitive and they're just hyperbole. But it was funny nonetheless. The Pope pledged a certain amount of money to 75,000 migrants. And if you divide that out, it was $6.66.
Yeah, per migrant.
But, you know, it was actually that number. It's just obviously a coincidence, right?
Right.
And, you know,
right.
I believe in coincidences.
Absolutely. Plan your whole life around them. Well, since we're sort of talking about this, I'll go ahead and this story was for later, but I'll just go ahead and do it now. And it's just a story talking about China. Because, you know, they've really upped their space game.
Yeah. And
how they've planned to build a base near the South Pole on the moon. Like they're planning on building a base.
Why the South Pole?
I'm not sure.
That's just oddly specific. Instead of just saying...
It's funny because it says that the details about China's long-term lunar goals have yet to be made public, but this little bit of information has come out. And the first parts of the projected station are due to reach orbit around the country, in the first half of 2020. So it's something that they're doing starting now. They haven't, like I said, it hasn't been made public, but they have said that they've successfully placed astronauts on 2 temporary space stations, Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2. And they're expected to start operating a more permanent station sometime in the next few years. And, they did just land on the far side of the moon.
Yeah.
And now they've decided that they want to do this space station. So I feel like we really are in a space race again.
Yeah.
Because, now the United States is like, oh, we need to go back to the moon. And all of a sudden, everybody is stepping that up, which is really exciting.
It is exciting, but, I wonder how territory works.
I don't know.
I wonder if you can claim this area for China, if you claim this area for United States, if it's just free for all. I don't know if we've figured those boundaries out. I mean, can anyone own the moon? Can you, is there going to be a war for the moon?
I mean, you never know. And it's
Wouldn't that
interesting.
be fun to sit back and watch at night?
It's interesting you said that about the pole because, every time the Apollo missions went to the moon, it was always near the equator. And, they never really went near the pole. So it's new territory, maybe. Maybe they just want something different. Or maybe they know something that we don't know.
There has to be a reason.
Yes, I would think so.
I still believe there's some pact that we have with China, with Russia, with anybody that's going up there. I still believe there are artifacts that would look much like Egyptian artifacts to us because that's what's been seen on UFOs before, the hieroglyphics and stuff. I believe that's what you find on Mars. I just do. I believe that civilization and the Egyptian civilization, I don't believe that what we know as Egyptians were the ones who built most of that.
Right.
I believe that was there already from a time before.
And they just sort of moved in.
They built around it.
Right.
And built little things that looked like the Great Pyramid, and never really quite as magnificent as that. But, we'll see what happens.
Yes. Well, all right. So let's move on. This is the last space story I have, and it's about the interstellar object, sort of, again. And do you remember where we talked about the interstellar object, and then we had that Harvard astronomer that came out and said, "Oh, I feel like it's an alien spacecraft, or it could be." He wrote the paper.
Yes.
So this same astronomer, Avi Loeb, he's come out with a new paper along with an undergraduate student of his, where they are saying that the interstellar object possibly wasn't the first visitor from another star system at all. They suggest that a pint-size object similar to that one came our way in 2014, briefly blazing as a meteor in the skies over Papua New Guinea. And what they've done is they've just studied some of this old data that they had, and they were backtracking a lot of these objects that had fallen to Earth, and they found one that when you trace the timeline back from where it came from, it seems like it came from outside of our solar system. So I think this is something that he's really clung onto, like he's really after this sort of thing. And I thought this article was very interesting because it talks about something we talked about recently, about how astronomers have long hypothesized that these comets and interstellar objects carried the seeds of life with them, the panspermia. You even mentioned it on the last show. And this article goes into that, like how exciting it would be to find the evidence of that by finding one of these objects that was interstellar that we didn't know about, one that actually came in and hit Earth. Maybe there was a fragment left over. It could be recovered. You could study it, all of that. And this is right on the heels of that story that we just did that caused us to talk about the panspermia, where they found the comet with the little piece in it that had been protected, that came from out in space,
right.
and they feel like it could have the building blocks of life. So I think this is very interesting. Definitely confirmed another interstellar object.
It is very interesting, but that was also the thing that we defended him over because there was other scientists trying to belittle his research, saying that there had been many such instances of things from interstellar space. Do you remember that? And
yes.
Trying to say it wasn't just this unique thing, and
right.
And we were like, well, that's kind of crap, So I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, are they going to be able to find this?
The one that they discovered, I don't think they can go find a piece of it because I think it burned up, but it's just giving them the opportunity to look at a lot of different meteors that did come to Earth, that ones they have data on that they can trace back. I mean, it's long, tiring work. It's going to take them a very long time, but it implies that there should be a lot more of these.
Yeah.
Like they were saying before. And this one that he found is much smaller than the other interstellar object. It did come to Earth. It didn't just fly out of the solar system. So there are differences there, but who knows? Who knows what they'll find when they keep looking at the data.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that he really just grabbed onto that and kept going with it.
Well, I mean,
despite what everybody else said,
I mean, it is one of the greatest stories that we've had in the last few years. I mean, we had something fly into our space that, is from another freaking, I mean, it's just crazy. It really is crazy.
It is.
And being able to study that when God knows what you would find. Like, it's almost like our space story that I started off in the monologue with, because if you could get in there and just imagine it's not made up of the same material.
Right.
Right. How cool would that be? So.
Well, and I also got the story because I thought it was interesting that it went into the, the panspermia thing. And we had just talked about that.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of stories lately are sort of just corroborating each other. It's really interesting. All right. So let's get away from space now. And let's talk about a discovery.
Oh, good.
So this is the discovery of a footprint that was found in Chile that they claim is the oldest footprint in the Americas.
Wow.
And they claim that this footprint is 15,600 years old.
Oh.
Making it the earliest such sign of man's presence in the Americas.
Hold on a second. So 15,000 years old. I'm trying to do a little math here.
15,600. So they found other human footprints, but none that were dated this far back. I think the closest one was about 1,000 years more recent. So this one's a lot older.
So I mean that predates the cataclysm, the alleged cataclysm, and that we had, But it's just interesting, the time period there. So in Chile, huh?
And the archaeologists said that the footprint was first spotted in 2011 next to a house, but for years they've been trying to confirm that it was a human footprint. Like they've been doing radiocarbon dating and on the organic, stuff around it, and just really studying it.
So is it like in a rock? I mean, we've seen them before where they're, they look like they're in stone. And
I think it is sort of like a fossil of a footprint.
Because the mud would...
Right. And they said that the footprint appears to be that of a barefoot man weighing about 70 kilograms, which would be about 155 pounds, of the species Hominippus modernus, which is a relative of Homo sapiens. But man, basically.
Yeah, they just call it that stuff, and they want it to look a certain way.
Right.
It can totally just be a Jed,
That's true.
And he was talking and he was hanging out, going down to the bar. I mean, we don't know. It was a long time ago.
Well, I thought it was an interesting discovery because it does put man back a little bit further in that area.
Anytime you see stuff like that, it's amazing. Just really, it just makes it real. And it also kind of counters many theories.
It does. It does.
As far as timelines go. Whenever you find a footprint that's 15,000 years old, that kind of poo-poos on a whole lot of stuff. So
archaeology is so fascinating.
it is. It is. I think
is.
you missed your calling.
I think, yes. At one time I did want to be an archaeologist, but it just didn't work out for me like that. I don't know. It's an interesting field. All right, so let's move on to a story from TMZ. And anytime I have a story from TMZ, it's generally about Zach Baggins buying something weird for his museum. And that's what this story is about. I really laughed because I pulled this story up, and the picture that TMZ put up for the story is the weirdest picture I've ever seen. It's like this really odd picture of Zach making this really weird face. They don't usually do that. Usually his pictures are very flattering.
I've seen that picture. They've used that picture on less than reputable sites that want to poke fun at Zach, and they'll use that picture.
Yes.
I've seen it.
So this one was very odd, but he has bought the haunted rocking chair from the Devil Made Me Do It case. And this is the story where Ed and Lorraine Warren had to help exorcise a possessed 11-year-old boy named David Glatzel. And this was in the early 80s. This rocking chair was in his house, and it was said to do all sorts of, when he was, doing his possessed things, it would rock by itself. I think it was said to have levitated, vanished, and reappeared. And David Glatzel himself and even Lorraine Warren claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. So it's very, very haunted. And as the story goes, the final exorcism concluded when supposedly the demon fled from David's body and entered a man named Arn Johnson. Now, Arn Johnson was the fiance to David's older sister, and he had been staying in the house. I think as the story goes, he had been staying in the house because she asked him to come because they were all afraid, and somebody had to stay awake all the time with David. And then eventually Arn and David's sister moved out to their own apartment, and months later, Arn killed his landlord, but then claimed that he had no idea that he had done it. And when he was in court, his lawyer used the defense that the devil made him do it, that he did it while he was possessed. And even Lorraine Warren claimed that, yes, he was possessed when he did it. And what had happened, I believe, in the story, if you read the long version of the story, during one of the exorcisms, he challenged the demon and said, why don't you just leave that boy and come into me instead? And he said words to that effect. That's not a direct quote. And so then months later, he started acting erratically, and then he ended up killing his landlord, who was, they were friends. It wasn't like but they just ended up having an argument. He stabbed him. He was caught, a couple hours later, a couple miles away, and he had no recollection of anything that happened. So then when he did go to court, that's the defense that his lawyer used, and it had been used before in England. I don't think it had ever been used in America before, but it had been used before in England. But the jury or the judge decided that was not admissible, and they couldn't use that defense, even though the Warrens, backed up the story and, were on his side and gave all the evidence. They showed pictures of the exorcisms. They showed everything from the case. They ended up having to throw all that out, and he did go to prison for, I think, 5 years.
So he didn't get life.
No, they gave him a lot of years, but I think he only served 5. And
they probably wanted his ass out of the jail.
They had to go with a different defense.
They're like coming by checking on prisoner 99772, and he's like hanging upside down,
Well, the story.
Hello, guard.
It says that the story is the premise of the 1983 book, The Devil in Connecticut. And I think it's rumored to be the plot of the next Conjuring movie because it is an Ed and Lorraine Warren case, one of their more famous ones. So it might be something that we get to see. I think David Glatzel's brother is the one that owned the chair and decided to sell it because he was moving and he didn't want to move it with him. I don't know why he kept it this long. But of course, Zach snatched that up. I believe he ended up paying about $67,000 for it, a pretty large sum of money. And it's now in his haunted museum, along with all that other haunted stuff that he has.
Eventually that place is just going to crumble and go into hell.
It's just going to be a big portal to hell. Yes, I agree.
I love it.
So another thing that was interesting I thought about this is he bought this chair before Lorraine Warren passed, like shortly before, less than a week, I think. So
yeah, well, that's a very interesting story.
Mm-hmm. It is really, and I'll link to the story, but I'll put a link up to another article where it tells the full complete story in more detail because it's really interesting if you read it.
So let me ask you a question. Number one, Arn Johnson is a very Scandinavian name, isn't it?
It is.
With the Arn and the Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, so I was going to talk about Lorraine Warren again. So obviously we talked about last week about her passing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's still very new.
It is.
And there's a lot of controversy right now in the paranormal field.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to ask your feelings on something.
Okay.
There is certain individuals
Mm-hmm.
who do, sweep technology and ITC.
Right.
Something I love very, very much.
Mm-hmm.
And they put out, things on their website, and they'll put things up with YouTube videos. And I actually went and researched it because I didn't want to just make an opinion based on other people's opinions.
Right.
So I wanted to listen, and I wanted to read the article, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
But there was some other people that did the same thing. It wasn't just one person, but there was one person that was more prominent at it
Mm-hmm.
than everyone else. And that is contacting, or allegedly contacting, Lorraine Warren. Now, her own family member who was with her at the time of death has said, hey, I listened to it. That's not her.
Mm-hmm.
There's other people going, come on, give them a chance to let the body get cold.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that are just, because they did the same thing with the Mark and Debbie Constantino, and that was a horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
I don't think I would still try to contact that. It was just bad.
Mm-hmm.
And like some celebrities, Robin Williams, I think Michael Jackson, people like that. So I know that in the paranormal, we're looking for answers. Okay. And we want to communicate. We want to find out things. And I also realize, I go back to the Psychical Research Society. Okay. The granddaddies of it all in England back in the 1800s. And some of their founders passed, and they instantly tried contacting them and did. And the story goes that they would tell them how to make certain things. And, I mean, it was.
Well, I think that's a different situation, because I think those people had that prearranged to do that. Like they said, when we pass, do this, and I'll do this. And that was like I got you. Agreed upon.
I got you.
Situation.
I'm just trying to be devil's advocate. And
I got you. Are you asking me my opinion?
I'm asking your opinion.
My opinion is that it should not be done. I don't feel like there is any kind of rule or law or even evidence that you need to immediately try to contact somebody as soon as they pass. Obviously, that's not the case, because we make contact with spirits all the time that didn't just pass. So I don't feel like that's, like, I don't know where they would think that was something that needed to be done immediately. And I think it's very insensitive, honestly, to, and even if it was something like, let's say I was a researcher and I wanted to try and contact somebody that had just passed, fine, but do it in your own space. Don't publish that. Don't put it out there for other people that might still be grieving or might be trying to grieve. Don't put that out there. As somebody that's lost a family member, like I have, I would not have been happy if somebody was trying to make a name for themselves on this evidence of my recently deceased, family member. I would be very upset about that. I don't think that, me personally, and it's not just for people that do sweep technology. I'm talking about like psychics, mediums, anybody that says they can contact the dead. There should be an unwritten time period rule there. You should at least have some common decency in that situation. So that's my feelings personally.
I totally agree. I obviously haven't lost anyone family member wise as close as you have. So I can only imagine how much pain that could cause, because you are trying to grieve or whatever. I also agree with you. I think that it's done in a very insensitive and bad taste. I think that it is on the heels of the death, like it is. I think that's only done for notoriety. And no matter what they say.
Right.
And, if you want to further the research, go ahead and do it maybe now, and then release it a year later.
Right. Or don't release it. If you're just doing the research to do the research, you can do it, get your conclusions, and talk about your conclusions. You don't have to do specifically, oh, hey, I contacted this person that just died. Here's, that's where you're just getting into doing it for notoriety.
And you know, we try to keep emotion out of things, and and really try not to take sides on stuff. But this, you know, we both agree that this is probably wrong.
Yes. I agree. It's probably wrong.
And we're not even calling anybody out by name. Just saying that, you know, those who know, and I don't want to advertise for the ones who don't.
Well, and I mean, maybe these are people that really do believe this. Maybe they've gotten bad information, or maybe they really do believe that it has to be done within a certain time frame. But there's nothing saying you have to publish that or
if
put
I
that out
remember
there.
correctly, this is the same person that a few years ago said that they could never do anything again with the sweep technology because...
Yeah, I do vaguely remember that.
Yeah. So, anyway...
Interesting. Anyway, so let's move on.
Yes.
So this is a story about the first museum dedicated to Japanese folklore monsters has opened near Hiroshima.
Oh, wow.
So this is awesome because it's Japan's first museum of supernatural monsters. And it allows visitors to get immersed in the strange world of, you know, these monsters through historical artifacts and interactive digital installations. I can just imagine in Japan
it's
awesome interactive digital.
You know it's great.
Yes, and most of these items were donated by an ethnologist and a researcher in Tokyo. Donated like 5,000 items from his collection. So
this guy had a cool collection.
He did, and he researched, and they're calling it the yokai. And he was a researcher of the yokai, which is a bunch of different monsters. And the city that it's in is known as the setting for a famous folk tale that tells of a 16-year-old boy's 30 days of confronting these yokai monsters.
Wow.
So that's part of the display.
What an interesting story.
Yeah, so it displays a bunch of items from this man's collection, and it includes a scroll painting of this famous folk tale.
That's so cool.
It's supposed to be really awesome. It says visitors can also learn the histories of the monsters through an interactive digital picture book.
So is it all just about the yokai?
I'm not sure. It doesn't really give specifics on all of the...
Does Japan have a Bigfoot?
I'm not sure. Let me look it up because I'm really surprised that you don't know.
Yeah.
Since you know that, you know, every continent has this Bigfoot.
Well, I mean, there's some that are way more prominent than others, but every, you know, piece of land has their own Bigfoot and its name and it's a story. So,
and when you look it up, it comes up with the name Hibagon.
Okay.
And it's the Japanese equivalent of the North American Bigfoot. And it says sightings have been reported since the 1970s around Mount Hiba in the Hiroshima prefecture. So in this area. And in this story, when they're talking about yokai, that just means like spirits, ghosts, that sort of thing. So, yeah, this area is obviously very supernatural.
Yeah,
so it's a good place for this museum. Yes.
Very, very, very cool.
So very exciting. I'd like to see, now that it's open, I'm hoping people will start posting pictures and
I've already asked
like that.
Chase Owens to go.
Have you?
And when I asked him, he had just wrestled in Hiroshima. And he's like, we just left. And I was like, damn it. Because I really want him to go and take some pictures for me. So.
Yeah. I'm sure when he goes back.
Oh, yeah. I'll send him the money. He's got to go.
All right. Well, let's move on to this next story. So this is a story that I got off of the website SB Nation. It's like a sports website.
Really?
Yes.
You're just hanging out on the...
Yeah, just hanging out on it.
Yeah.
And the reason I went there is because I saw this article about a Stars defenseman, hockey team, the Stars, this defenseman, flopping down 3 times in a row, and it claims it's because of the Ghost Bride of Dallas. So I went and looked at this article, and what this is it's not technically, he wrote it like it's a paranormal story, and he's done a couple articles like this, the guy that wrote this article. So I thought it was really funny. So they showed the video of this Dallas Stars defenseman, Issa Lindell, where he fell 3 separate times during an exchange with another hockey player from the other team.
Right.
Like flopped down 3 different times. And he claims that there's no way this guy could have fallen down 3 times. It's obviously paranormal. That's how the article reads. And he's like, I know why. Because just over a mile away from the American Airlines Center where they were playing is the Adolphus Hotel. in Dallas. And I know you've heard of this place.
Yes.
We've talked about it. So I thought it was really funny.
That's the one that the NBA players like would stay at and were scared to death of.
Right. And he talks about how the ghost bride of the Adolphus, like it's a story that's from the 1930s where a woman was set to be married in the ballroom at the Adolphus, but she was stood up. And later that night, the hotel staff found the woman hanging in the ballroom. Now, that's not the only ghost story at this hotel. This hotel is seriously haunted. Like, I think it's really haunted.
Yeah.
But he claims that since she haunts the 19th floor of the hotel, she messes with guests by tapping them on the shoulders. She causes windows to fly open. And she has this special propensity to target staff during the graveyard shift, like at night. So he's saying that this ghost bride targeted this young hockey player because maybe he looked kind of like her fiance. So she went over to the American Airlines Center and caused him to fall down 3 times during this fight, which is not true. It's just funny that he used this paranormal story in his article.
That is funny. I mean, he's going to create a topa if you don't watch out.
Well, the funny thing is this isn't the first time he's done this. He had an article last week about James Harden.
Yeah.
He's a basketball player.
Yes.
Where he was playing and he did this weird thing. Like he has the videos on there where it looks like somebody punched him in the throat and he like was selling it and everything. But the guy that went by him didn't touch him. And so he says
that's kind of what the NBA guys do.
After extensive research, he's led to believe that it could only be the work of Richard, an usher at the Capitol Theater who died in 1947, which is only a half a mile away from where they were playing.
So this guy loves the paranormal.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't find any more articles that he did in this vein.
We need to write this guy.
But it was really funny because he talks about like this story from the theater where someone felt like they got punched in the throat. So obviously this ghost traveled a half mile down the
right.
And
It's
punched the basketball
just
player.
preposterous. Yeah.
Yes. So, but it's really funny the way he's tying that in, like he's finding these haunted locations.
No, it's great. It's very entertaining. I would like to subscribe to his work because that's very entertaining. Do you remember? It's been a couple of years, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. I believe it was a Baltimore Raven. Do you remember the guy who went down on the sidelines and somehow paranormally
and just bounced right back up?
Yeah, but in a weird time slip kind of way.
Like someone yanked him up off the ground.
Yeah, like this was absolutely humanly impossible.
Right. I do remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember if one of you guys remember the player, the team, what that is, so we can look that up. Please send that to us because that's just something really funny.
I wonder how close that stadium is to a haunted location.
If Stacey finds that, she'll put it on the in the newsletter.
Yeah, so I'll try.
Because it's a really crazy clip when you watch it. We watched it 100 times. We kept rewinding it, watching it. We did it in slow motion.
And I know people can do weird things. I know they can bounce up, and I know they can stand up from being laying. But this was just, it didn't seem right.
This was silly. This was like watching Michael Jackson dance. It just doesn't make sense physically.
Right. Well, something else I thought was funny about these stories, and I'm going to link to these because they're just great. You have to read them. But I don't know a lot about hockey. I mean, I kind of watch hockey, but I don't know all the rules. But I don't
think anybody does.
In this particular clip, 2 players got a penalty. And the first guy, Bortuzzo from the other team, he got a penalty for cross-checking. And that's what was happening when Lindell fell. He was being cross-checked. But Lindell got an embellishment call because he was throwing himself down. That's why it looked like he was flopping and throwing his arms out and making it look like he was getting hurt worse. And I thought, that's amazing. Why don't they have that in every sport? Yeah. Like when football players pretend like they were pass interference, give them an embellishment penalty.
Can you imagine how many Tom Brady would have?
Oh my God.
No.
Cam Newton.
Oh my God.
Cam Newton.
It's like we both got it at the same time.
Every embellishment.
Oh
call.
My God.
He's the worst. We need a crybaby rule.
It's just like we just lost every Carolina Panther fan we had. Like every single one is just like, you know what? We're going to listen to Jim Harold. Screw you guys.
I like the Carolina Panthers.
No, you don't.
I just don't think
you don't like the Carolina Panthers.
Cam Newton,
don't lie.
I think he just is kind of whiny about it. I don't know.
Him and old Twinkle Toes and all of them. No, I can't stand him either. Just because he was infectious to the whole team with that.
Yes.
He's like, oh, don't hurt me. But I liked them when they first came into the league, and I had the most badass Carolina Panthers leather jacket
You did when we first met.
you can ever imagine. Did I still have it then?
No, you don't still have it. I don't know what happened
No,
to it.
then. Did I still?
Yeah, you had it when you met me. You kept it in the back of your car.
Okay. Wow, I didn't know that.
I don't know what happened to it, but you had it for a while.
Yeah. Oh. Well, no, that's cool.
Were you trying to tell me about it? I'm sorry. I've seen it. It was really cool.
No, that's awesome.
All right. Well, I have a couple more stories here.
Okay.
You ready? So this next story is just about an event going on at the Rolling Hills Asylum that I thought was really cool. It's called Paint with a Ghost at Rolling Hills Asylum this summer.
Well, sounds pleasant.
So it's a one-of-a-kind event where you go on a few dates they have planned out, and you can do crafts, like do painting. And a couple of the dates you can also drink as you paint, like they have mead and ale and things like that.
So you can get drunk at Rolling Hills Asylum.
Well, they have wine and alcohol
Super
tastings
active paranormal location.
as you do crafts and paint. So it says you're going to there's a paint with a ghost event, and there's like felting and painting classes. All the supplies are included, and a couple nights they're going to be offering wine, beer, and meat tasting. You have to be 21 to go to that one though. So it seems like an interesting, different kind of event. I know that they have, now my sister does these classes where you go and drink wine and paint, and like the teacher up front takes you through how to make a painting. Everybody paints the same thing, but you drink wine while you do it. I would never be able to finish a painting if I was trying to do that. But this is where you do it in a haunted location, and it tells you in here that Rolling Hills Asylum was a former, poorhouse, and it used to hold what they considered needy people, orphaned children, families, destitute, elderly, physically handicapped, the mentally unstable, that sort of thing. And a lot of those people, their families wouldn't claim them after they passed away, so they're buried there at the asylum, and it is supposedly very haunted, and people go there every year. It's one of the pay-per-view places, and so now you can get tickets, which are limited, so you have to go ahead and get your tickets if you want to, where you can go and do these classes in the asylum. So I don't know, it's interesting and different.
So a lot of times I talk about dangers in the paranormal. So one of those dangers is when you go into a very known, super haunted location. I don't know, such as Rolling Hills Asylum, off the top of my head. One thing you don't want to do when you're around known haunted locations, spirits, is be inebriated.
Right.
Even in the slightest. Because it can really open you up more than you realize to a possible attachment or attack. So that's just, I don't know, it's a weird recipe, because the place is very haunted, and there was a lot of tragedy there.
Right. And even though they're not technically investigating, they're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like you can't just sit in that building and not talk about.
I'm sure.
that it's haunted.
Listen. This sounds fun. It does. It sounds like a really cool time, really groovy time. If we lived there, we'd be doing it.
Right.
So, I'm not poo-pooing on it. I'm just saying,
So be careful.
be careful.
All right. So this next story is an interesting monkey story. And I'm pretty sure you sent me this one. It's about the ninja gorilla.
God.
It's about this gorilla that figured out how to climb through an electric fence at this zoo in the Netherlands without getting zapped. So there's this area in the enclosure. It has this electric fence, and then between the electric fence there's glass. So there's a space between the electric fence and the glass. And normally the gorillas aren't allowed to go there. But this particular young gorilla figured out that he could get through the electric fence without being zapped, and he got through, ran back and forth while all the other gorillas were looking at him, and he tapped on the glass, to say hey to the people. And then after he wandered around for a little while, he just used his little ninja skills to get right back through the fence the same way without getting zapped. Now, I watched the video, and you can see him standing in the area he's not supposed to stand in, sticking his arm in and out between the fence while the other gorillas watched him, almost like he was saying, look, as long as you don't touch he figured out as long as you don't touch the metal, it's not going to hurt you. And it was like he was showing them that. It was very strange.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape.
Well, to go along with your ninja gorilla story, I found this other story that is very recent from an Australian zoo, where the zoo had to be evacuated because an orangutan escaped for the second time. Second time this orangutan has escaped his enclosure in 4 years.
Poncho Billy, that's crazy.
It's the Melbourne Zoo, and it confirmed that a 15-year-old Sumatran orangutan escaped from his enclosure just recently, and they had to close the zoo until they could get him back in his enclosure. It only took him about an hour, but they said that he previously escaped from his enclosure by using a blanket to get out of his cage. I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know how he used his blanket to get out of his cage, but they did not tell how he got out this time. Like, they didn't reveal how he was able to escape this time.
The other apes would
so
read
he's
it.
like picking the lock or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was doing. But he's 15 years old, so he's obviously learned and smart orangutan. But second time he's escaped. So these monkeys, they're starting to figure things out, aren't they?
Yeah, it's happening. And you know what you might not want to do?
What's that?
Splice human brains.
Human brain genes into the monkey's head. Exactly.
China. Freaking China. I bet they send those moon monkeys up there to the moon, to the South Pole.
Oh, there you go. So they're not going to send human astronauts. No. It's going to be monkeys.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to have a whole monkey civilization on the moon.
Ninja monkeys. I swear. It's happening and nobody's listening. The AI and the gorillas are taking over.
All right, last story. And this is a story from Eugene, Oregon. And it's about a stabbing suspect that told police he believes he's part alien and that aliens are taking over the world. And that's why he stabbed this guy. He's obviously on drugs as well. He was supposedly standing on the side of the road and he was throwing items at cars. And one man stopped and confronted him. And
that would have been me.
The guy, Handy, stabbed him, but the man didn't realize that he had been stabbed until he got in his car and drove away. I guess he was just so angry and, adrenaline and stuff. He got in his car, drove away, but then realized he had been stabbed and called the police. His injuries were not considered life-threatening. Like, he didn't get stabbed in the heart or anything, obviously. But he gave them a description, and the man, Michael Handy, he was arrested just a few blocks away from where it had been happening. And when the court records came out during his interview, he said that he believes that he's part alien and that the world is being taken over by aliens. Oh, and the cops found meth. Well, so there you go.
We're not so sure that meth is not an alien product.
This is true.
I think aliens come here to mine meth. It's, it seems like a lot of people, a lot of times it lines up, right?
Right.
We have meth and alien.
Well, in the one movie with Roddy Piper, you had to wear the sunglasses to see the aliens.
So you think here you just have to smoke the meth? You
have to smoke the meth and your eyes are opened.
I'm sure they are.
The aliens.
And they will not close for days.
Exactly.
So there you go. On that one, we will end the news.
There you go.
All right. Well, a little bit of ninja monkeys and on a whole lot of crazy with star systems and all that good stuff. So, and the cool Warren story.
Yes.
Nothing cooler than the Indians, not the Apaches.
Right.
That
found the Yeti footprints.
The Yeti footprints.
Yes. And we're going to all die in about 17 years from an alien.
From
an asteroid.
Oh, you don't have to worry about that. Didn't AOC say that we die in 12 years?
Oh, that's right. The world will be ended by then. So it's not going to matter.
Nothing really to worry about.
Yeah. Okay.
And, on that, I'll just say, for my lovely wife, Stacey, I'm John. Join us next week on the Paranormal Sideshow.
Good night.